Richard Cook. I'm back to tell you some more stories behind some of my pictures. After the jobs flying with the Jaguar Squadron and then the Lightning, I was commissioned by the Telegraph colour magazine to do a piece on the Red Arrows. Well, I'd met Alan Voyle, Squadron Leader Alan Voyle, who was the commanding officer of the Red Arrow Support Squadron, while I was doing my decompression course at North Luffenham. So I rang Alan and arranged to go down to RAF Kemble, where the Red Arrows were based, to go flying with the team. So I had several flights, taking normal sort of pictures out of the window, flying with the manager, who I think was Mike Whitehouse at the time, flying around the formations that the team were doing during their practice displays. I also flew in the formation and experienced the close formation stuff which the pilots themselves experience. Anyway, I was enjoying this, and I was very impressed with the flying. By nature, I'm someone who's probably more attracted to aeroplanes covered with weapons and camouflage and things, but there was nothing like the flying of the Red Arrows. When I took this picture, I had a kind of light bulb moment where I thought if there was a camera on the bottom of that aeroplane looking back at my aeroplane, the picture would be astonishing. When we landed, I spoke with Al Voyle and asked if there was any chance of doing this. He said, "I've got a spare belly panel in the cupboard." So he took it seriously, and I showed him my camera, which is a big, heavy brass Nikon. I'll show you. It's solid brass. It weighs as much as a house brick, literally, and it has a big frontal area, so it's going to make a big hole in the air. Anyway, Alan designed and built a bracket which fitted onto the belly panel. It was operated by the power source from the anti-collision light, which was fitted up to an on-off switch, which I could operate from the back seat, and the power to the anti-collision light drove a solenoid, and the solenoid pressed a shutter release cable. You can see the housing for that there, and it all looked very impressive. But Alan said to me, you know, the hard part's going to be persuading the team to give it a try. So I went and spoke to Frank Hoare, who was the team leader and the team, and I said, you know, how impressed I'd been with the flying and how dramatic I found it, and how I was really surprised at the sort of drama and excitement of it. Because I hadn't really expected that, and that all the photographs I'd ever seen of the Red Arrows didn't do them justice, and really made it look more like aerial flower arranging. You can imagine how that went down. I think they were looking at each other trying to decide who was going to hold me and who was going to hit me. But it did the trick. It got their attention, and Frank Hoare decided to give it a try, which consisted of a short test flight of the rig to check that it didn't affect the handling of the aircraft, check that it didn't come off. Obviously there were no aircraft behind in this test flight, and that worked perfectly. So we set about briefing the sortie. The difficult thing is I'm trying to take a picture fairly precisely through a camera that I can't see through. I've got 36 transparencies in a roll of film, and I can operate the camera from the back seat with a little switch, but how do I control what the image is going to be? Well, I came up with an idea. I'll show you now. I taped around the lens with white tape. I had a polarising filter on the lens, which is dark, and this worked as a sort of barrel sight. So I could position the pilot's head right in the center of the frame, because when it's like that you can't see any white tape at all. Whereas if the pilot can see that, he's flying too low. If he can see that, he's flying too high, and the same with side to side. And in addition, the the tape stopped the lens settings from moving as well. So the only other thing was then to establish the distance, which again was briefed very carefully. I got up a ladder looking down on the aircraft. I got the pilot to measure out, to get in the cockpit, see how far away the lens looked, and try and replicate that in the air. It was very close. It was a 24mm lens, and by the time I'd framed the shot as I wanted it, it was a very close formation position. Anyway, we went up and flew it. It was a fairly short sortie because, as I said, I only had 36 shots. I made 36 lines on my knee pad in my flying suit, and every time I took a picture I crossed one off. I decided on the backgrounds, by virtue of the light, the fact that there was a mirror in the aircraft, but also I could explain to my pilot that what I was looking at the front, I wanted to be 180 degrees from that position, so that what I was looking at in the front would be in the background. And all that happened as far as the formation was concerned was the pilot had to call me on the radio and tell me that he was in position on the lens, and then simply had to stay there. My pilot then continued with the maneuvers. Now, my pilot for this was Frank Hall, because it's a very tough job as team leader, flying a 9-ship formation, because you're actually flying for the whole formation. The guys down at the back and aren't looking where they're going. It's not their job to look where they're going. It's their job to hold into a formation position, and it's the team leader's job to make sure that the rates of turn are going to be suitable and the guys are going to be able to hold into position. So what happened was that the team leader flew me in the 10th aircraft in the front. The manager then flew the main aircraft formating on the camera aircraft, and everybody else formated on him in a normal sort of way. Well, the very first time we tried it, we produced this. They were astonished. I was thrilled. They'd never seen an angle like it. There hadn't been an angle like it, and they couldn't get enough of it. They were more than happy to fly me again, and we tried some different maneuvers, different formations of aircraft. It just worked perfectly from the very beginning. Alfoil's bracket had no wind buffet, no vibration coming through from the aircraft. The pictures were technically everything you could wish for. On this one, if you look on the ground, you can see that there are 10 shadows, including the camera ship shadow. And you can see that it is closer than the red arrows are normally to themselves. It's a very close formation position. But having done it once, it continued to work. We thought we'd try and loop it. That worked. It's coming up into a loop up at the top. And in this one, coming out of the loop, you can see there are wingtip streamers as well as the smoke that the aircraft are making. These wingtip streamers are an indication of the G. You pull a lot of G at the bottom of a loop, 2.5, 3G, easily, maybe a little more. And you get these little condensation trails from the wingtips. But the camera worked perfectly on every occasion. It happened to be mounted upside down. It was a Nikkormat EL with an auto drive, I think it was called, motor on it, which took just one shot at a time, and it just worked perfectly. The word spread. Ray Hanna, who was an ex-Red Arrows team leader, had left the RAF and he got a Spitfire, and he pitched up with his Spitfire, and the Red Arrows formated on the Spitfire, which was formating on the camera ship. We all enjoyed working with this, and it seemed that there was more and more that we could do with this rear-facing camera. This is the team. It's me in the middle. On the left is Wing Commander Ernie Jones, who flew me most of the time in the Nat as I went to photograph the other fast jets of the RAF, namely the Tornado, Hawk, Harrier, Jaguar and Lightning again. On the right is Squadron Leader Alan Voyle, who did such a great job designing and building the bracket. I'd also like to thank Wing Commander Ike Dawson, who was the Wing Commander of the Red Arrows at the time that I did the first test flights and the first photography, and he took the chance and authorized the sortie. I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and if you have, remember to like it, subscribe if you haven't already, and tell your friends. Next time I think we'll have a break from fast jets, and I'll tell you the story of how I photographed the Black Horse for Lloyd's Bank.